What if your grocery money suddenly vanished, overnight? In 2026, millions of people in Ohio could wake up to find their food stamps gone, not because they did anything wrong, but because the rules quietly changed. Right now, over 1 in 6 Ohio households rely on SNAP to put food on the table, and experts warn that upcoming policy shifts could trigger one of the largest benefit losses in decades. This isn't a rumor, it's written into budget deadlines, expiring protections, and new requirements most people have never heard of. Here's the scary part: many families won't see it coming. No warning, no phone call, just a letter, or worse, nothing at all. Parents, seniors, and working adults could suddenly be forced to choose between rent, medicine, or groceries, all while prices remain painfully high. So what's really happening behind the scenes, and who's most at risk? Stay with me, because the next few minutes could change how you prepare for 2026. Number 1. Expiration of pandemic-era protections. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the government quietly rolled out emergency protections to prevent families from falling into hunger. These rules made it easier to qualify for food stamps, increased benefit amounts, and reduced how often people had to prove their eligibility. For millions of Ohio residents, these changes weren't a bonus, they were a lifeline. They helped working parents keep food on the table, allowed seniors to stretch fixed incomes, and gave struggling households breathing room during a time of extreme uncertainty. But here's the problem: these protections were never meant to be permanent. As we move closer to 2026, many of those pandemic-era policies are set to fully expire. That means lower benefit amounts, stricter eligibility checks, and a return to rules that existed before prices exploded. The catch is that life hasn't gone back to normal. Rent is still high. Groceries cost more than ever. Utilities, gas, and medical bills continue to rise. Yet the system will start acting as if the crisis is over. For many families, this creates a painful gap between what they earn on paper and what they can actually afford in real life. The most alarming part is how sudden these losses can be. Some households may lose hundreds of dollars a month with little explanation beyond a form letter or an online notice they never saw. Others could be removed entirely because they now have to reapply, re-verify, or meet new deadlines. If you rely on SNAP, or know someone who does, this is a wake-up call. The end of pandemic protections doesn't just change policy, it reshapes who gets help and who doesn't, often without giving people time to prepare. Number 2. Stricter work requirements. One of the biggest reasons people could lose food stamps in 2026 is the return and expansion of stricter work requirements. On paper, these rules sound simple. If you're able-bodied and under a certain age, you must work, train, or volunteer a set number of hours each month to keep your benefits. But real life is rarely that simple. Many SNAP recipients already work, often in low-wage, unstable jobs with changing schedules, limited hours, or no paid sick leave. A missed shift, a reduced schedule, or a short-term illness can suddenly put someone out of compliance, even if they're actively trying. What makes this even more dangerous is the paperwork burden. It's not enough to work, you must prove that you worked, on time, every time. That means submitting forms, logging hours, using online portals, or responding to mail notices that can easily get lost or overlooked. For people without reliable internet, stable housing, or flexible jobs, this system becomes a trap. A single missed report can trigger a benefit cutoff, not because someone refused to work, but because they couldn't navigate the system fast enough. The harsh reality is that these rules tend to hurt the people already on the edge: older workers, people with undiagnosed health issues, caregivers, and those in rural areas with fewer job options. Studies have shown that stricter work requirements do not significantly increase long-term employment, but they do increase hunger. As Ohio prepares for 2026, this shift could quietly remove thousands from SNAP, not by improving self-sufficiency, but by creating barriers that many working people simply can't overcome. Number 3. Income limits that don't keep up with inflation. One of the most frustrating reasons people lose food stamps is something called the income limit problem. SNAP eligibility is based on how much you earn on paper, not how much you actually have left after paying bills. As wages slowly increase, many households appear to be earning more, but in reality, that extra money is swallowed instantly by higher rent, food prices, gas, and utilities. The system doesn't adjust fast enough to reflect today's cost of living, and that disconnect puts thousands of Ohio families at risk. Here's where it gets dangerous: even a small raise, sometimes just $1 or $2 per hour, can push someone just over the limit. When that happens, benefits can be reduced sharply or cut off completely. This creates what experts call a benefits cliff, where earning slightly more money actually leaves families worse off than before. Imagine taking on extra shifts to survive, only to lose hundreds of dollars in food assistance. For many working families, that's not progress, it's punishment. The result is a system that unintentionally discourages stability. People delay raises, avoid overtime, or turn down better opportunities because they're afraid of losing help they still desperately need. Seniors on fixed incomes, single parents, and workers in low-wage industries are hit the hardest. As Ohio moves toward 2026, this outdated income model could quietly remove thousands from SNAP, not because they're thriving, but because the rules fail to recognize how expensive survival has become. This gap between policy and reality is one of the most overlooked threats to food security today. Number 4. Changes in federal funding and budget priorities. Another major reason food stamp access could shrink in 2026 comes down to money and politics. SNAP is funded at the federal level, and every few years, Congress must decide how much support the program receives and how flexible states can be in using those funds. As pandemic-era spending winds down, lawmakers are under pressure to cut budgets and reduce deficits, and programs like SNAP often end up on the chopping block. Even small funding changes can have huge consequences for states like Ohio. When federal funding tightens, states are forced to make hard choices. That can mean stricter eligibility checks, fewer exemptions, longer approval times, or more aggressive case reviews. Ohio may not officially end food stamps for millions, but it can make the program harder to access and easier to lose. The system becomes less forgiving, with little room for mistakes, delays, or special circumstances. For families already living paycheck to paycheck, these tighter rules can push them out quickly. What makes this especially concerning is how quiet these changes can be. There's no dramatic announcement, no breaking news headline saying benefits are being reduced. Instead, the impact shows up slowly: longer wait times, confusing letters, and higher denial rates. By the time people realize what's happening, they're already struggling. As 2026 approaches, shifting federal priorities could reshape SNAP in Ohio from a safety net into a narrow gate that fewer people are able to pass through. If this video made you stop and think, don't let that feeling fade, use it. Drop a comment telling us how these changes could affect you or someone you care about, even if it's just one sentence. Before you go, watch our previous video where we break down what families can do right now to prepare. And if you believe this kind of content matters, please support our work. We put countless hours into research so you don't have to. Number 5. Administrative errors and recertification failures. One of the most overlooked reasons people lose food stamps has nothing to do with income or work, it's paperwork. SNAP requires recipients to regularly recertify their eligibility by submitting forms, documents, and updates about their household. In theory, this keeps the system accurate. In real life, it becomes a minefield. A missed letter, a form sent to the wrong address, or an online portal that doesn't work can instantly trigger a benefit shutdown, even if someone still qualifies. The problem is worse for people facing unstable housing, limited internet access, or language barriers. Notices are often sent by mail or buried in online accounts many people don't check daily. If a deadline is missed, sometimes by just a few days, the system can automatically cut benefits with no human review. For families already under stress, this feels less like assistance and more like a test designed to be failed. What's especially troubling is that many of these cases are reversible, but only if the person knows how to appeal and has time to fight the system. Some never do. They assume they're no longer eligible and simply go without help. As Ohio heads toward 2026, increased caseload pressure and tighter budgets could mean more errors, fewer caseworkers, and less support. That combination alone could push thousands off SNAP, not because they broke the rules, but because the system broke down around them. Number 6. Increased scrutiny and fraud prevention measures. As 2026 approaches, SNAP programs in Ohio are expected to face increased scrutiny under the banner of fraud prevention. On the surface, this sounds reasonable: taxpayer money should be protected. But in practice, stricter anti-fraud measures often mean more verification, more delays, and more chances for honest people to lose benefits. Most SNAP recipients are not committing fraud, yet they may still be treated as if they are guilty until proven otherwise. These measures can include extra identity checks, repeated income verification, cross-checking databases, and surprise reviews of active cases. While designed to catch abuse, they frequently flag innocent discrepancies, like fluctuating work hours, temporary side jobs, or mismatched records between agencies. When that happens, benefits can be frozen or terminated while the issue is reviewed. For families relying on SNAP to eat that month, even a short delay can lead to empty refrigerators and skipped meals. The real danger is that fear and confusion push people out of the system voluntarily. Some recipients stop applying or fail to respond to notices because they're intimidated, overwhelmed, or unsure how to fix the issue. Seniors, immigrants in mixed-status families, and people with limited literacy are especially vulnerable. As Ohio tightens oversight, the program may look tougher on paper, but the human cost is more hunger, not less fraud. This shift could quietly remove thousands of eligible families from SNAP by making the process too complex to survive. Number 7. State-level policy decisions in Ohio. While SNAP is federally funded, Ohio's state government has enormous power over how the program is actually run. This includes decisions about how strictly rules are enforced, how often people must recertify, and whether exemptions are granted for vulnerable groups. As 2026 approaches, Ohio lawmakers and state agencies may choose policies that tighten access, even if federal law allows more flexibility. These choices can quietly reshape who gets help, and who doesn't. For example, the state can decide to expand work requirements, limit hardship exemptions, or reduce outreach efforts that help people stay enrolled. It can also invest less in caseworkers and support systems, making it harder for applicants to get questions answered or fix mistakes. None of this requires ending SNAP outright. Instead, it creates a system where benefits are technically available, but practically out of reach for many families. What makes state-level decisions so powerful is how invisible they are to the public. Most people don't follow policy changes buried in administrative rules or committee votes. Yet these choices directly affect parents, seniors, people with disabilities, and low-income workers across Ohio. As political priorities shift, SNAP can become a tool for cost-cutting rather than support. By 2026, state-level decisions alone could determine whether SNAP remains a true safety net, or a system that quietly pushes people out when they need help the most. Number 8. Asset limits that punish saving. Another reason many Ohio residents could lose food stamps in 2026 is the return or stricter enforcement of asset limits. Asset limits look at what you own, not just what you earn. This can include small savings accounts, emergency funds, or even modest resources set aside for unexpected expenses. The intention is to reserve SNAP for those with the least resources, but in reality, it often punishes people for trying to be financially responsible. Imagine saving a few $1,000s to prepare for a medical emergency, car repair, or job loss. Under asset limit rules, that safety cushion can suddenly make you ineligible for food assistance, even if your monthly income barely covers rent and utilities. This forces families into an impossible choice: stay eligible and remain financially fragile, or save money and risk going hungry. For seniors, people with disabilities, and low-wage workers, this rule is especially harsh. The long-term impact is deeply troubling. Asset limits discourage planning, stability, and independence, the very things public assistance programs are supposed to support. Families remain trapped in a cycle where they can never get ahead without losing essential help. As Ohio reassesses SNAP rules heading into 2026, stricter asset limits could quietly remove thousands from the program. Not because they're wealthy, but because they dared to build even the smallest financial buffer in an increasingly expensive world. Number 9. Rising housing costs that SNAP doesn't fully account for. One of the biggest pressures on Ohio families right now is housing costs, and this is another hidden reason people could lose food stamps in 2026. Rent across many Ohio cities and suburbs has risen dramatically, yet SNAP eligibility calculations often fail to fully reflect these increases. On paper, a household may look financially stable, but after paying rent, there's often very little left for food. The system doesn't always capture that reality. SNAP formulas are slow to adjust to local housing markets, especially in areas where rents spike faster than wages. This means two families earning the same income can face very different realities, depending on where they live. Someone paying high rent may still be treated as if they have enough money for groceries, even when their budget is already stretched to the breaking point. As housing eats up a larger share of income, families are pushed closer to the edge, without qualifying for extra help. The ripple effects are serious. People cut back on food to keep a roof over their heads. Parents skip meals so children can eat. Seniors ration groceries to afford rent. As Ohio moves toward 2026, rising housing costs combined with outdated SNAP calculations could disqualify thousands who are housing stressed but food insecure. This mismatch between policy and real life quietly pushes people out of the program, not because they don't need help, but because the system isn't built for today's housing crisis. Number 10. A shift toward temporary assistance, not long-term support. One of the most fundamental changes shaping SNAP in 2026 is a growing belief among policymakers that food assistance should be short-term only, not something people rely on for extended periods. On the surface, this idea sounds reasonable: help people during tough times, then move them off assistance. But this way of thinking often ignores reality. Many SNAP recipients aren't facing a brief setback. They're dealing with long-term challenges like low wages, unstable jobs, chronic health issues, caregiving responsibilities, or fixed retirement incomes. As this mindset spreads, programs are redesigned to push people off faster, not support them longer. Time limits, frequent reviews, and stricter definitions of need become more common. The message subtly shifts from, "How can we help you stay stable?" to, "Why are you still here?" For people whose circumstances don't improve quickly, despite their best efforts, this creates constant pressure and uncertainty. Benefits feel temporary and fragile, always one rule change away from disappearing. The danger of this approach is that it treats food assistance as a motivational tool, rather than a basic support for survival. Research consistently shows that access to reliable nutrition improves health, job stability, and child development. When SNAP is cut off too soon, families don't magically become self-sufficient, they become more vulnerable. As Ohio looks ahead to 2026, this shift toward temporary help could quietly remove thousands from SNAP, even though their need hasn't changed. It's not that people are suddenly better off, it's that the system has decided it's done helping, whether families are ready or not. As we look ahead to 2026, one thing is clear: the risk of millions losing food stamps in Ohio is not caused by one single change, but by a perfect storm of policy shifts, rising costs, and stricter rules. The expiration of pandemic protections, tougher work requirements, outdated income limits, and quiet administrative barriers all work together to shrink access to SNAP. For families already stretched thin, this isn't just a policy debate, it's the difference between having food on the table or going without. What makes this moment especially dangerous is how invisible these changes can be. Benefits don't disappear with a loud announcement. They fade through missed letters, tighter deadlines, and rules that no longer match real life. Parents, seniors, working adults, and people with disabilities may find themselves cut off, not because they stopped needing help, but because the system stopped accommodating reality. When food assistance disappears, the impact spreads, children struggle to focus in school, health problems worsen, and local food banks become overwhelmed. But this story isn't just about SNAP recipients. It affects entire communities. Grocery stores lose customers, healthcare costs rise, and emergency services feel the strain. Food insecurity doesn't stay contained, it ripples outward. That's why staying informed matters. Whether you rely on SNAP, know someone who does, or simply care about the future of your community, understanding what's coming is the first step toward preparation and advocacy. As 2026 approaches, the most important question isn't just what policies will change, but who will be heard when they do. Awareness creates pressure. Pressure creates accountability. And accountability can shape outcomes. The future of food assistance in Ohio is still being written, and paying attention now could make all the difference later.